Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating study that sits right at the intersection of human psychology and the physical layout of your office space. We all know work can be stressful, but what if the very walls, desks, and chairs are actually interacting with your personality in ways you never even realized? Well, we're going to explore some research today that literally flips everything we thought we knew about the quote-unquote problem employee completely on its head. So, is your office layout secretly controlling your mood? Just think about your daily grind for a second. Have you ever felt a wave of sheer frustration wash over you just because the overhead lighting is glaring on your screen? Or worse, because you can hear every single word of your coworker's phone call in your open-plan office? Trust me, it's not just in your head. The physical constraints of where we work have an immense, measurable impact on exactly how we feel about our jobs. And the stakes here are absolutely massive. 80%. That is the amount of working time the average office worker spends completely desk-bound. This essentially means our physical work environment is our primary habitat for the vast majority of our waking hours. When you're spending that much of your life anchored to one single spot, the design of that spot isn't just a matter of aesthetics, it's a fundamental matter of your mental and physical well-being. Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, Designing for Satisfaction, the Science of Your Desk. To really understand the plot twist we're getting to, we first need to look at workplace design itself. When people hear the word ergonomics, you probably just picture a really expensive, highly adjustable chair, right? Actually, scratch that. It is so much more than that. It stems from the Greek words ergon, meaning work, and nomos, meaning physical law. So it's an entire discipline concerning physical, cognitive, and organizational factors as they relate to human work system design. We're talking about mental workload, decision-making, work stress, and how the physical layout literally interacts with human cognition. Let's see how this builds into what researchers call the 3 pillars of workplace design. First up, we've got the space itself. That massive, never-ending debate between open-plan spaces designed to foster communication versus private, closed offices. Second is furniture. The research notes this really brilliant concept of the action office, where furniture is customizable and mobile, adapting to your immediate needs rather than forcing you to adapt to a rigid, immovable desk. And third, the environment. That's your HVAC, the lighting, and perhaps most importantly, noise control. Every single one of these pillars directly impacts an employee's day-to-day survival. Now, we established academic consensus on these pillars is incredibly clear. A well-designed and great physical workspace can increase staff well-being and job performance, resulting in a much more cohesive culture. Essentially, the universally accepted truth here is pretty simple. Good office design equals high job satisfaction. But what happens when we introduce a completely different, highly volatile variable into this perfectly designed ecosystem? Which brings us to Section 2, the aggressive employee problem. Enter the villain. In traditional academic literature, aggressiveness is usually classified under deviant workplace behavior. They define it as voluntary behavior that violates significant organizational norms and actually threatens the well-being of the organization. It's almost universally seen as a destructive force, right? It's the ultimate antagonist of company culture, generally associated with role conflict, poor health, and skyrocketing job dissatisfaction. Now, what's really interesting here is exactly how aggressiveness is measured and defined in the context of this specific study. The traits they looked at include an employee who strongly prefers individual work over teamwork. They're highly competitive with their work, they compete aggressively for rewards, and they fundamentally lack a sense of unity with their peers. Basically, they aren't there to make friends, they are there to win. And conventional wisdom says these exact employees will eventually become totally miserable and ruin the vibe of your perfectly ergonomic office. But here comes Section 3, a surprising plot twist, flipping the script. An MPhil thesis by researcher Wajiha Munir decided to rigorously test these exact variables together: workplace design, job satisfaction, and aggressiveness. And the findings were absolutely shocking. To validate this, they gathered 262 valid, reliable responses from corporate employees across major companies. Think Unilever, Coca-Cola, huge banks, tech firms. The demographics were 58% male and 42% female, spanning all sorts of ages and experience levels. So this is a solid, highly representative sample of the modern corporate workforce. The researchers set out to test 2 main hypotheses. Hypothesis 1 was that enhanced workplace design is positively associated with job satisfaction. Unsurprisingly, this was completely accepted. The data proved that, if you give people good lighting and comfortable desks, they're happier. Makes total sense. But what about hypothesis 2? They guessed that workplace aggression significantly and negatively moderates that relationship. The entire assumption was that aggressive traits would totally ruin that job satisfaction. And the data? Completely rejected it. No way. The assumption was dead wrong. So, here's the absolutely crucial point. Aggressiveness actually has a positive moderating impact. I really want you to absorb that for a second. The data empirically proved that highly competitive, aggressive employees actually experience higher job satisfaction when given the right workplace design. It doesn't make them miserable at all. It literally makes them thrive. Let's move into our final section to unpack this highly counterintuitive revelation. Section 4, Redefining Workplace Success. Why the villains thrive. So why does this happen? The research sets up a pretty brilliant comparison. Think about that famous business book concept, Never Eat Alone, which completely champions the extroverted, highly social networker. Networkers are consensus-driven, they love socializing and open plans, but relying on that mutual consent often creates massive delays in decision-making. On the flip side, you have the aggressor. They are strictly goal-oriented. They have an individual focus. Because they aren't waiting around for everyone to agree, their decision-making is rapid and incredibly efficient. You see, in the context of business, aggressive often simply means fiercely competitive. These individuals aren't inherently malicious or evil, they are just intensely focused on achieving organizational goals. They actively avoid time-wasting distractions like random office gossip. They're highly motivated to win, whether that means securing a massive tender or beating a top competitor. And when you give them an adaptable, quiet, personalized environment, like a well-designed enclosed office or a noise-controlled pod, they don't use it to slack off. They use it to hyper-focus and achieve those goals. And guess what? Achieving goals makes them highly satisfied with their jobs. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what managers and HR professionals need to take away from this explainer. First, identify your employee behavior types without immediate judgment. Second, do not write off highly competitive, seemingly aggressive individuals as toxic. Honestly, they might just be your most driven achievers. And third, provide flexible, noise-controlled workspaces that allow them to channel that intense focus. If they hate your noisy open-plan office, it's probably not because they're antisocial. It's just because the noise is a literal barrier to them winning for the company. Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought to reflect on today. Are you the aggressive, highly competitive employee? And if so, is your physical office actually working for you? Or is it working against your natural drive to succeed? I really want you to walk into your workplace tomorrow morning, look at your desk, listen to the noise around you, and genuinely ask yourself how that physical space is shaping your ambition. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer today, and keep questioning the design of the world around you.